This week, we'll be rebroadcasting some executive interviews we did at RSA, so we're doing things a little differently. First, we'll do the news. WIZZ raises $1 billion. Funding doesn't slow down just because RSA is over. Akamai is going to acquire No Name or announce the intent to. Palo Alto is acquiring IBM's cyber assets, yes, including QRadar. LogRhythm and Exabeam are merging, so more SIEM acquisition merger news there. WIZZ's deal to acquire Lacework collapses, though they intend to use some of that $1 billion that they raised to acquire somebody. Splunk announces a cyber asset management product. Google announces a threat intelligence product. Microsoft announces security as a top priority again. Thoughts from RSA? Then we've got some pre recorded executive interviews for you from last week's RSA. For our first trio of interviews, Mandy Logan interviews Camilla Chan, CEO and co founder at Flexon, about their launch of Flexon Server Defender. Then Mandy interviews Amit Sinha, DigiCert's CEO, about IoT and device trust. And finally, Matt Alderman interviews Jitu Patel, Executive VP and General Manager of Security and Collaboration at Cisco, about Cisco's new Hypershield offering, which I haven't heard too much about yet. I'm interested in that one. For the second group of 3 executive interviews, I interview Jim McDonough, VP of Global Sales at Intezer. I learned how to say their name correctly, about using Gen AI to address the alert triage problem every SOC is currently struggling with. Then I interview Ricardo Villadiego, founder and CEO of Lumu Technologies, and we discuss the current state of cybersecurity, particularly regarding security operations. And finally, I interview John Check, CB Cyber Protection Solutions at Nightwing, the biggest cybersecurity company you've never heard of because they're newly divested. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Graylog is on a mission to make threat detection and incident response easier, faster, and more affordable. They help cybersecurity teams reduce risk across attack surfaces with SIEM, log management, and API security solutions. Their newest offering, Graylog API Security, adds a new layer of defense by discovering rogue APIs, monitoring for threats from inside the perimeter, and providing detailed guided responses. Full fidelity capture of API requests and responses ensures you can perform complete investigations and meet regulatory requirements. Some popular and persistent API myths have almost become threats themselves. Go to securityweekly.com/Graylog and watch the video there to debunk the top 5 misconceptions surrounding API security. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Classic Movie Day. This is episode 362, recorded on Thursday, May 16th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me today is the Admiral of AI, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How you doing, Katie?
I'm well. What is your favorite classic movie?
I mean, I guess we'd have to define classic. Like what classic meant when I was a kid meant you probably something black and white. But to people today, what does classic mean? Like, is Jurassic Park a classic movie now? I don't know.
It could be.
What's the period of time there? Honestly, I never watched a whole lot of classic movies, and I don't think there's really any that I have in my repertoire that I go back and rewatch. Like I've watched some, and I appreciate them, but when I want nostalgia, I'll go back and watch Alien or Aliens, or I already mentioned Jurassic Park. Like I'm a sucker for like creature features that are also kind of sci-fi and action oriented. What about you?
Yeah, my first thought before I asked you the question was, gosh, how would I even define classic movie? Would it be Gone with the Wind era or Wizard of Oz? Or could it be something like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I watched 7,000 times with my best friend during grad school? Yeah, I guess it would depend. And probably the movie I have watched most in my lifetime was Ferris Bueller's Day Off because, like I said, my best friend in grad school and I watched it a million times. We also watched Shawshank Redemption and ate
Mm,
chocolate mint ice cream, and those were some good
nice.
memories. So, although the movie, maybe not the best movie, it's a good happy memory. So I guess classic movie is what you define it to be.
I think Ferris Bueller's an excellent choice given that Matthew Broderick spoke at RSA this year.
True. And I heard he was wonderful. I wasn't in attendance to hear it, but I heard it was great. And also, by the way, classic movie. If you're in cybersecurity or games, you got to give that a shout out.
Yep, yep, yep. Another good one. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, we can probably define our own classic movies now. I was going to look
It's
for
our
the
podcast. We
definition.
can do what we want.
Yeah, that works for me. 80s are now classic movies. All right. Um, Yeah, so now for the Enterprise Security Weekly News, it feels a little weird not starting off with an interview, but this is the time of year when we have a ton of interviews from RSA that we're going to air on the podcast. So we get to just focus on the news a little bit, which is great because we didn't have a news segment last week, and there was so much going on. I know you didn't go to RSA, Katie. I did see Tyler briefly there, so it was good to get to see him in person. I could not tell you the last time that we got to chat in person, so that was nice. But so much happened. I managed to cut a lot of it out of the news, but we still have 33 items on the docket here.
Yeah, I wasn't there this year. I've been told by many people it was, quote, back to pre-pandemic frivolity. Everybody was having a
Yeah.
good time. Everybody said it was a really good conference this year.
I heard that a lot. And I was in Broadcast Alley recording a bunch of these interviews quite a bit, so I didn't get around as much as I did. But I did speak at B-Side San Francisco, which felt, pre-pandemic normal. And I did speak at RSA also, and had a pretty good turnout in for my talk there, especially for a Thursday morning. A lot of
Oh,
people will head out Wednesday night. We'll take red eyes back home, but still had a good turnout Thursday morning, so I was happy about that. Had some folks tell me that it was the best talk they had seen at RSA. I said,
all
fill
right.
out the surveys, fill out those surveys. Make sure you get that on the survey because I get rated on this stuff.
Excellent. Excellent. What was your topic?
Yeah, so at B-Sides San Francisco, my talk was about a AI, but like trying to kind of tamp down the expectations and the hype. So it was titled AI Best Janitor or Worst Superhero. And then my talk at RSA was about SaaS security. It was two steps forward for SaaS adoption, one step back for security. Just talking about the uncontrolled adoption of SaaS and the lack of integration and security and visibility for security teams into really the software that employees are using more than anything else.
Nice.
So talking about RSA, so I've got a few items in here, 23 and 24. One of them is some numbers on attendance from RSA themselves. They said about 41,000 people turned out for it, which is about what I would expect for RSA, what we were expecting beforehand.
Yeah, that
But
was
also,
really 2019 numbers because 2020 they said it was supposed to be about 43, but that was the last time I was there in person and it was not
mm,
for sure. So that's great
yeah, we
that
did
they're
have. Yeah, I mean, writing was on the wall that there was something going on.
yeah.
So a number of companies pulled out of RSA 2020. I was there at a booth with Thinkst. We made the hard decision to go, and kind of regretted it a little bit. It was still fine. I think only two people that I heard of got COVID there, but but yeah, IBM I remember specifically pulled out. So there was a big bare space where IBM's huge booth was supposed to be, and a couple other companies followed suit, and aired on the side of caution. But also, I found it interesting. One of the other posts here claims that while 40,000 attendees were at RSA, another 40,000 were in attendance, but didn't buy a ticket, didn't actually go to RSA, which I know there's some population that are just there to network and to meet in person. And because there's so many side things going on, there's B sides, there's other small conferences, companies set up stuff in meeting rooms and hotel suites and things like that. They rent out local places, local eateries, pretty much anywhere. They can spend some money, less money than a booth on the show floor. They'll buy up any place they can kind of set up shop and meet with prospective customers or current customers. But yeah, if it really is the same number again, 40,000 again, like 80,000 is a lot of people.
I think that would be hard to validate that number
Yeah.
because, there's no registration, there's no telling. But
Right.
like you, over the years, and I think it's gotten even more so in the past. Even chunking out the pandemic couple of years there, it's gotten even harder to count because people will come in, they won't register. People do a lot of just city networking. I know a year or two ago, I was part of a conversation about having a side conference that was in San Francisco, completely unrelated, but the day after. So, it's hard to tell, but I think a lot of people see it as one of the two big pillars of cybersecurity meetup opportunities throughout the year. And really, there's a lot of good business that's done, I'm sure, at both RSA and Black Hat. Black Hat B-Sides, DEF CON in Vegas in the summer, but a lot of it really is about networking. This industry is a very tight knit community in a lot of ways, and so I'm sure there are a lot of people who are like, I don't need to go to the conference floor. I don't want to go to the talks, but it's almost it's almost a bad business decision in a lot of ways not to go as a company, especially if you're a vendor company, because people sort of
Well,
expect it, right or wrong. I think people expect it.
like as an example, there are companies like Barracuda that haven't been there for almost a decade. We started seeing companies do this long ago. And Palo Alto Networks, one of the biggest companies in cybersecurity, did not have a formal presence in the expo at RSA, but you can believe they had people there. They probably had
Oh,
hundreds of people that were in San Francisco during RSA,
yeah.
taking advantage of that network effect of all the people being there. And yeah, it's yeah, I wonder about that number. If it's truly another 40,000 people that were in attendance for RSA, but didn't actually register for RSA,
Super hard to
if that
tell,
makes
but
sense.
I would bet if you're a Palo salesperson and you raise your hand and you say, I want to go to RSA, there's probably a very large
Mhm.
budget for that. So even companies who
Yeah.
choose not to exhibit, they definitely have people there. Their executives, I'm sure, are going. You just have to have some presence. And a lot of people love it. It's the highlight of their year. They go, they get to see friends and colleagues and past and potentially future coworkers at these events, and do it in a little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere. Unless you have two talks and then, two talks and 3,000 interviews, and then you're probably not very relaxed, right, Adrian?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an analyst situation. Like I know analysts who were there who had 40, 50 briefings, which it just seems insane. It seems like a lot to handle. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about some of the news here. I just heard something else about WIZZ. So let's start with WIZZ because they're story number one because they raised $1 billion in funding. Moves their valuation to $12 billion. So and that's $12 billion in an age where we've already had adjustments in valuations.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty serious number to throw out there. We also see that their deal to acquire Lacework collapsed. There aren't many details out there except that it didn't pass due diligence, whatever that means. There's a lot that that you could imply or you could guess out there, but we really don't know. And I saw that they they announced something around incident response and forensics. WIZZ's security graph, automated blast radius and root cause analysis for cloud incident response. Somebody sent this to me a few hours ago, so this is not one of the stories that we have posted currently. Um, but yeah, clearly they've got a lot going on. They're a company to watch, and specifically, they're saying this $1 billion is earmarked to grow through acquisition. It sounds like.
Yeah, they're really a remarkable company. If you just look at their business model and how they've grown in a very short time. They've made a lot of very smart moves. I'm sure there are people out there who would disagree with me, but they've made a lot of very smart moves, and they're really vying to hold on to that sort of top 5 spot along with some of the bigger and longer established players. We've got Microsoft, we've got CrowdStrike, we've got Palo, who've been in the game for a really long time. And WIZZ has given everybody a run for their money, and they seem to be doing it in a smart way, taking on pieces of the industry that people are most interested in and or have earmarked for budget. And this latest announcement, the one that's not up there, really seems to be an area that I'm starting to see more and more news about. And so they're jumping on the right bandwagons, it seems to me.
Yeah. And we've already mentioned Palo Alto a couple times, so I think that's the next logical place to turn to because we found out yesterday it was announced that Palo Alto Networks is buying IBM's at least QRadar, maybe IBM's whole security portfolio. I'm not really clear about what they're getting or not getting here. I'm sure we'll get more details as some of that comes out. It says QRadar Cloud Software, with the idea that they're just going to move those customers over to their own Cortex X SIM. I don't know how to pronounce that, XSIM platform, which is their SIM, their cloud based SIM, and yeah, so effectively acquiring QRadar to shut it down. They said they will keep it around for folks who absolutely insist on having a SIM on prem, managing all that on prem. But yeah, super interesting. Also, given that the same day, we find out that two kind of legacy older SIM companies, UEBA companies, are merging, which
Yeah.
a merger that's not. Well, first of all, the companies are. Uh,
LogRhythm and Exabeam.
Thank you. LogRhythm and Exabeam, and it's almost never do we see a true merger happen without a private equity firm pushing for it or putting those two companies together. That's typically where we see mergers happen. So a rare event. And most interesting is a week ago, Gartner comes out with their Magic Quadrant that has QRadar and Exabeam in the leader quadrant. Uh, Exabeam is clearly not doing great if they have to merger with LogRhythm, and QRadar is, I mean, basically getting shut down. So I'm not sure what I probably wouldn't buy anything in a leader quadrant because it's in the leader quadrant. If this is, if Gartner wasn't even aware that these things were happening a week or going to be announced a week after they came out with their Magic Quadrant. What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I mean, so here's the thing about the Magic Quadrants and all of the analysts' comparison type reports. First of all, in their defense, they're only working with what they're hearing, right?
Right.
Vendor companies get questionnaires. They're pretty extensive. The analyst firms do talk to customers, but a lot of it is also based on familiarity. I'm not going to say the words pay to play because that's way too controversial. But the reality is, if you're a bigger company, if you've been around for longer, if you have established relationships, there's a certain sort of comfort with that. And that's human nature. That isn't a flaw in the analyst model. It is human nature. When humans are more comfortable with something, typically it
Yeah,
comes to
but
the
it's not
forefront.
pay to play, it's bias. It's
And right.
you
And so I'm not
your
going to
money
slam
can
the
bias analysts, but you can't pay for a spot.
exactly. So there's a little bit of that, but there's also a little bit of, if you're the vendor and you know something is coming and it might adversely affect what is, I don't want to say free press, because I guarantee that both of these companies are subscribers to all the analyst firms because they're big enough. But basically, if there's something that might adversely affect any kind of third party validation, third party press, third party marketing, you're not going to tip your hand, right? You're not going to let these analyst firms know that. You're going to play your best hand and you're going to make sure that you're on the forefront. Are we actually comparing product to product, feature functionality? No, because that's not what the Magic Quadrant is about. It does have that aspect in it, of course, but there is also a lot of weighting when it comes to strategy, and strategy is a lot of the time based on history, past moves that a company has made. So it's not a simple recipe. There is no simple formula that goes into it. Does it say to buyers, hey, maybe we shouldn't be putting as much stock in this? Absolutely. But I think that's actually been the case for a really long time. I think a lot of smart security teams use waves, magic quadrants, landscape reports, whatever all of the other analyst firms call their comparisons report, as short lists. That doesn't mean they're the only companies that do or should make it, but it's such an easy way to cut through a lot of the noise and try to discern what companies are in what category. So if I were a buyer, if I were a CISO, or if I were, the head of a SecOps team, or what have you, I wouldn't totally count out a magic quadrant or like reports. But I never would have used that as my be all end all anyway, for
Right.
a lot of those reasons.
Yeah, and along with that, one of the keynotes at RSA was basically a sales pitch for it was George Kurtz talking about their next gen SIM, and I couldn't believe they were using the term next gen in their product name. It's kind of a
Like your
um,
next gen oil lamp.
well, it's like a decades old buzzword. I
Right.
didn't think it really had any life left in it. Palo Alto, uh, with their original product back in 2006 or whenever it was, when they initially went GA, they called it a next gen firewall.
Yeah.
And that's almost 20 years ago. So I was kind of surprised to see the term still being used, because even in the SIM world, next gen SIM has been a buzzword for over a decade. I think it was a decade ago that I first saw people talking about next gen sim. So it's I used to make a joke that you should advertise continuous next gen, like you're always a step ahead of
Future,
your competition.
future
But
gen. So here's a
yeah,
question for you. We're seeing this. We're seeing QRadar. Where do you think the future of SIM is? I have a few thoughts, but
so it depends on your use case, right? Like a SIM is a very broad tool. I'm going to shove all my events and logs into this thing, and I can do a lot of things with those events and logs. I can do incident response, I can do forensics. I can do regulatory compliance. In some cases, like what we saw with Microsoft, they only had 30 days of logs. So that big
yeah.
breach last year where they got hit by that Chinese APT group, they don't actually know when the attack started because they only had 30 days of logs. So certainly it's important for a lot of different use cases. If you're using it for threat hunting, for threat detection, stuff like that, it's a very different use case. And I think that's where CrowdStrike is going to focus with their next gen SIM is speed. because
Yeah.
the real problem here, particularly with cloud, I don't know how quick cloud is getting. It used to be there was at least a 10-minute delay before you could get find out that an event occurred on AWS. I'm sure they've probably cut that down somewhat now, but yeah, there's a lot of talk at RSA of doing automated remediation, taking automated actions based on detections. And if that's truly the case, you want your SIM to see something and fire these automations as quickly as possible. And on first of all, I'm very skeptical about the broader market being ready to fully automate remediation. To take actions
Yeah.
like shutting down accounts and
I agree.
maybe removing files and shutting down services and things like that. Maybe some are there. I don't think the broader market is quite there yet. So I'm looking to get more feedback on that from general folks. The vendors seem to think that they are, because I kept hearing that over and over and over again. But I think it kind of splits the market. So I'm curious about this, where you see some organizations just shoving all their logs into Snowflake or Cribble or Datadog or something like that, and trying to use it in place. So a lot of products are like, you don't have to move all your SIM data to use our product. Just point us to your data and we'll use it in place. Um, so I think it's going to be interesting to see if we end up, companies have different SIMs for different use cases, or if they try and
Mhm.
use one product for all of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see the traditional SIM start to fade away. And so when I saw the announcement about QRadar, I thought, okay, this is where it starts, because now we have, some really big names making some big moves. Of course, I wasn't at RSA, so I didn't hear George's talk or really hear anything about it, but that only furthers my thinking that the SIM has always been a mainstay of the
Yeah.
security program. And I think we're going to start seeing some new products or enhancements of products that make the SIM a lot more of a data feed, just a data feed. And I think that's
Yeah.
coming in the next few years. So I'm going to make a claim that we're going to start seeing some more stories on that in the next 6 to 8 months or so.
And I wonder if it's going to become a must-have for a security platform, particularly for a security platform that's focused on security operations. Like if
For
you have an
sure.
EDR, XDR play, it seems like you kind of have to have SIM as part of that.
It seems like
Sentinel
you need a
One's got
SIEM.
a SIEM. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
Sorry,
yeah,
I
Palo Alto's got one, CrowdStrike's got one, Sentinel One's got one, Microsoft's got one. So if you've got a security operations platform and you don't have Elastic's got one. They acquired Endgame, so they have kind of a EDR, XDR, SIM type of play there. So yeah, it seems like that is kind of like a required ingredient now for a SecOps platform. Just like we
Yeah.
see, SASE has a very well defined product lineup that you have to have to be able to call it SSE or SASE. We're kind of seeing that with SecOps platforms now as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very unlikely that we're going to see a lot of standalone SIMs in the next few years. I agree.
Yeah. So I guess what would be in that package? Like you've got to have endpoint in there, so you've
Yeah.
got to have EDR. XDR typically implies cloud event information, so cloud logs and things like that. You've got to have the SIM to store it all and to do your detection engineering and all that. You've got to have SOAR. You've got to have some kind of automation to go along with that. Um,
Automation and orchestration. Orchestration, big,
yeah,
big, and some sort of traffic analysis, at a certain level.
network. Would you add
Net,
network to that?
yeah, because
NDR.
not that, network is infallible, but it is a
Right.
source of truth. I mean, the network
Yeah.
sees everything. whether it's, you know, true or not, sometimes has to be investigated, but I would definitely add NDR to that. And I
Yeah.
think more and more we're starting to see elements of needing identity.
Mm, yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, that should be the flexibility of a XDR platform or SIM, next gen SIM at this point is you should be able to pull in that stuff from a lot of different locations. And, yeah, we just saw, see what number it is. Google announced a threat intelligence product where they're kind of pulling together a lot of different threat intelligence sources. Of course, they've had Virus Total forever, and that's part of this announcement. But they have a lot of other sources as well. So it's kind of like a roll up of different threat intelligence sources into a single product. And I'm sure that's very easy to plug into Chronicle, which is their SIM. Uh, so yeah, interesting to see them moving in this direction also, and that could threat intel could easily become part of that platform. Palo Alto has had
Yeah.
threat intel for a long time. They've got Code 42 and they've got Wildfire, which Wildfire kind of competes with Virus Total there in analyzing malware and binaries and pulling threat intelligence out of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, really um, seems pretty clear where a lot of this is headed. And there's, I think the MQs are going to get even more muddled before the year's out, before they get to the next MQ. It's going to be one thing that's going to be interesting about the Magic Quadrants is to look at the change from year to year as this kind of stuff happens. See the company names that either merge or swap out or disappear entirely.
You're going to need almost a separate glossary for some of these Magic Quadrants because, you're going back legacy products 20 years in some of these cases. QRadar, uh, when was that acquired by it was like 2008 or something?
I went through it. We owned it while they were going through the acquisition because we couldn't get anything fixed because they were in the midst of doing what they call blue washing, which is, for an IBM product to be sold by IBM, it has to be in these languages. It has to adhere to brand colors and brand guidelines and like certain accessibility requirements. So like for a whole year after acquiring a product, you're kind of stuck in limbo. Like only the most critical bugs get worked on while they IBMize the product. And I
It
think that
was
was 2011.
2011. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It was later than I thought, but I mean,
yeah, because that was
that's
only the company that I worked at that had QRadar. I was only at that company for a year. That was right before I became an industry analyst. So that year kind of stands out.
but yeah, going back, there's this chain. There's Q1 Labs, and it's IBM QRadar, and now it's either going to go away or be something else. You're going to need a glossary to understand the history. You're going to need like the history of cybersecurity if you get a cybersecurity
Timeline.
degree or certification, because it's getting more complex, more convoluted for sure.
I've considered doing that. When I was an analyst, I actually started working on some product timelines. Just showing kind of like products emerge, get acquired. Just showing that whole timeline of how that happened. I always thought that would make like some interesting posters. That you could put on the wall, like the history of endpoint security, and be like an evolutionary chart, right? I think that would be a lot of fun to put together.
Right, just like Jurassic Park, that could be your new favorite classic movie.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to browser security. There's some interesting stuff going on there. I don't think we have the funding announcement here. I think we might have talked about it the last time we had a news segment, but I believe Island is the one that's still independent, and I think they announced like $175 million raise. Talon got acquired by Palo Alto, so that is now part of Palo Alto, and I think it's part of their Prisma Cloud or Prisma SASE. Uh, that so Palo Alto just redid all their platforms, all their branding, and instead of four platforms, they now have three platforms. And I'm still working that out. I'm actually working on a write up for Ions. So if you're an Ions customer, you'll be able to see that soon. but I have to update it all with all this news that happened last week. Um, but yeah, we've got number 5 here, Layer X Security has a browser security platform. And then there's another one here. Number 14, SquareX is also browser security. So apparently, I don't know if that's coincidence that they both end in X, that they're both a word ending in X. Like, is that a thing to be in browser security? You need an X at the end of your brand? I don't
I
know.
don't know enough about marketing for that industry, but it's at least a thing if two is a quorum.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I haven't dove too deep in these. I think SquareX is implemented as an extension. I don't think it's a standalone browser, and I don't know too much about Layer X yet. But they're certainly not raising like Island and Talon level money. So I don't think they're building their own browsers from the ground up. Well, and neither did Island or Talon, right? They're still using Chromium under the covers.
Right. Looking through their website, there's not a lot, but it's different than I would have expected. It's really focused on attack path. Um,
I'm
understanding the
assuming.
attack path and you know finding the initial filtration point, but based on attack path methodology. So it's more than just what we would think of traditionally as browser security. So I don't know anything about it, but looking at the SquareX website, that's not what I would have expected at all when you say, oh, browser security.
Right. Yeah, tagline here is for Layer X is turn any browser into the most protected and manageable workspace, which is honestly, I think to me, more attractive than here. Use this special browser that we created, because then you run into all kinds of issues like how do I make sure employees only use this new browser, is this new browser going to break in weird ways that are going to break workflows and things like that? Like the last thing I want to do
Yeah.
is make my employees use a different browser when they're already used to something, because that's where most of the work is going to happen, is in the browser.
They're probably not going to do that. And then you're going to have, turf wars, and that never ends well for security. SquareX
Yeah.
also in browser scanning. Um, protection against document-based threats, macros, embedded comment, ensures no user data is transmitted to external services, cloud-based isolation. So yeah, it seems like it's something that's layered on. That would be smart. Because yeah, if you say to me, hey, use this new whatchamacallit browser, I'm probably gonna be like, yeah, nope, I'm good. I'm in Safari, Brave, or Chrome.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been pretty skeptical of the enterprise browser market and the browser security market. Um, yeah, I mean, it seems like it kind of overlaps with SASE. There's a lot of proxy based stuff. You've got uh, secure web gateway as part of SASE. So if you're going to capture the traffic anyway, like there's some serious overlap. Obviously, there's some things with a browser, particularly, you can have a web application that lives entirely within a browser tab. So there's a lot of events and things that you won't see on the network, that you won't see online. So, there's good arguments for both, but I think the lower friction approach is probably going to win out here. So it'll
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to watch.
Got some good investors and some good backers. So somebody's investing time and effort in it. So we'll see.
All right. Let's jump to, so Akamai announced intent to acquire No Name, which is an API security company. And I should also mention that Tyler's company, or the company he works at, Traceable AI, also raised some money. So 30 million raised there. And good to see acquisitions in his market. I assume. I presume they're anticipating an acquisition exit. Um, Yeah, AI security, seems pretty straightforward. I would expect AI security to go to, I don't know, vulnerability management vendors like Akamai is a bit different. It's certainly focused on products that they can sell as a inline or out of band network service, right? Like they do anti DDoS, they do WAF. Uh, API security makes sense.
Right. Um, well, and then number 26, are we jumping too far ahead? The rise of application security posture management, that all ties into it.
And that looks like a really good essay. Is that the same? So that's the
I know it's a
software
little bit of
analyst.
a turn in the road, but it all ties in, right? API security,
Yeah.
application security posture management. It because everything is coming together. I hate to use that because it sounds so cliche, but like just the idea of integration, it's not new, it's not novel, everybody is doing it. It has to be now. There has to be some sort of integration model in your security stack, or you're just not going to exist. And thus API security becomes even more critical. um, so these are some good plays. I'm sure Tyler would have a lot to say. I'm sure Tyler is hoping for a very, very positive exit in the next few years, so he can go off and do the next fun thing. But it seems to be a pretty safe bet, because I don't see that the industry would get away from the need for a good security process for API. I just don't think, just the
Yeah,
way
and
tools are
most
built.
most of the most of the API security stuff I'm seeing looks like it's more SecOps focused, more
Yeah.
operational focused, whereas ASPM stuff seems to be more on the CI/CD side of things.
Yeah.
Address security issues before they go to production. Um, but yeah, both of these, so both 25 and 26 are from a Substack called the Software Analyst, which I've been enjoying these write ups quite a bit. Some very useful write ups, lots of diagrams, lists of vendors, some very good explainers on different things. Number 25 is the future of SOC automation platforms. And then number 26 is the one that you mentioned, the rise of ASPM platforms. So recommend checking out. Yeah, subscribe to that Substack. A lot of good explainers coming out of there. Um, so we've got a dumpster fire and a whoopsie here. The dumpster fire, millions of malicious containers found on Docker Hub. So almost a literal dumpster fire, if you consider a container, analogous to a dumpster. A container could be used as a dumpster, right?
It is
Uh,
a dumpster is a kind of container, so sure, why not?
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of this. Like it seems like it's becoming harder and harder to run these image repositories and software repositories.
Yeah.
Lot of both attackers and opportunists are flooding them with stuff. Like I think the last story we looked at here was somebody trying to earn cryptocurrency by developing open source. So there's the intent was to try to um, provide a monetary incentive for open source developers that was immediately abused. And somebody just started automatically creating uh, you know open source projects that aren't real open source projects. And yeah, it's just you shouldn't be able to upload millions of things to one of these repositories. They're going to have to put in, you know, I don't know the solution for this, but there's got to be some friction in there to make it harder to just flood a repository with malicious stuff or fake stuff. They're just seeing a lot of abuse here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20% of all public repositories were imageless repositories. Yeah, three main malware campaigns: the downloader campaign, which offers pirated content and game cheats; the ebook phishing campaign, which lures users with free ebook downloads to steal credit card information; and the website campaign, characterized by randomly generated repositories containing benign descriptions. Yeah,
Yep. That's about what you can say about it. Yep.
yep.
And
So the
it's gonna
whoopsie, while we're talking about unintended consequences, Google Cloud apparently deleted a large company's online account. So all their cloud assets, everything, including their backups. The company was called Unis Super, and I think they manage um, uh, like something like 153 billion in assets. So
the biggest company you've never heard of kind of thing. But
yeah,
I think this was the one where they actually had additional backups.
yeah, they
Um,
did. They had them
and
somewhere
and
else. So
so
that's
it
the only reason.
wasn't the catastrophe that it could have been. But again, the biggest company you've never heard of can do that, right? The average company is not going to have a backup in a backup in a backup.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah, they didn't
whoopsie.
say where the other backup was. It, they could have been in S3, another public cloud provider, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but it's worth mentioning that this has never really happened before, so this could be just a freak accident. I don't think this is something most people need to worry about, but it's concerning that it happened at all. But
Sure.
yeah, this was a fund with 620,000 members, and just suddenly all their services just go offline. Um, so pretty weird situation. Yeah, 125 billion in funds under management. Of course, that's not going to affect the funds, but people's ability to access their funds, to do anything with their funds, is all going to be attached to that stuff that got deleted, the web
Right, and
application.
internal operations could theoretically, again, this shouldn't be a fun story because it is a very rare instance, so it shouldn't be like, "Oh
It's
my god," but,
it's a good
it's
scenario to practice for, because it's
mhm,
could be a ransomware technique, right? Pay a ransom, or I delete everything in your cloud account. That's happened before.
sure.
Happened to Code Spaces, a company called Code Spaces, back in 2014, I think it was. Um, yeah, so that's it's good to practice for. Like, how long, what's the mean time to reboot your entire company off of backups?
Well, a
That's a
week or 2
thing.
ago, weren't we talking about, practicing, those tabletop
Mhm.
exercises and yeah, you want to prepare for the worst, expect the best, but prepare for the worst and practice. You can't just put it in a you can't just put it in some kind of document and be like, that's our plan.
Yeah. Yeah, you maybe you think you're gonna be back up in a day, but, until you actually test it, maybe it'll take you a month to get everything back up and running. You don't know until you test it, until you try, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is as a DR BCP lesson I learned very early in my career. When we actually tried recovering something, it was just night and day from our expectations.
And that's not the time, during an actual incident is not
Uh,
the time you want to be figuring that out. Like, oh, this isn't what we thought. What the hell do we do now? It's not the
yeah,
best time.
the people asking you for an estimate, want an accurate estimate in that situation. And
Yeah.
if yeah, you don't wanna tell them, "We'll be back up in 3 days," and it's actually gonna take a month.
Yes, that
That's bad.
then you start to get the handyman syndrome where everybody's like, oh God, expect double. Whatever they tell you, expect double. We don't want that in cybersecurity.
All right. Yeah, so I should mention two quick announcements here, and then we'll jump to the squirrel stories. So number 18 and 19, Microsoft did make a big announcement that improving security is going to be connected to uh, um, executive compensation or leadership compensation. So some big statements coming from Microsoft. I think it's something they had to do. Some people characterizing it as hardcore. Some people saying, mate, I don't think it goes far enough. So we're right back where we were in 2002 with a trusted computing memo, where Microsoft's had enough uh, security issues that they have to make a big statement. They have to kind of refocus their engineering teams or development teams on favoring security over, getting new product out. So that was a big announcement. And another big announcement that's somewhat related. CISA, along with a bunch of other organizations, worked on this. Got 68 companies to sign a pledge to incorporate best practices and manage vulnerabilities more efficiently, more transparently. There's a bunch of things in this secure software pledge that they've put together. Like one of them is no SSO tax. Like essential security services should not cost a customer extra. So that's kind of cool to see in there. I think most people just kind of rolling their eyes at it, saying, "Yeah, this is not going to move the needle at all." But if it starts a trend where paying extra for the good logs and having to pay extra for single sign-on or SAML or something like that goes away as a practice, then I think it's worth it. Just a few of those things could have a huge impact.
Yeah, agreed.
And then our squirrel stories. I don't know if you checked any of these out. Number
I have
32.
not, but they look. I did look at 32, and yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody designed and I think even patented a clear dome that you can retrofit on an existing commercial airframe that basically puts two seats near the top of the plane where you have a 360-degree clear dome and basically simulates like you're just sitting on top of the plane while it's flying, which sounds equal degrees thrilling and terrifying to me.
I
Like I
mean,
would
it looks
absolutely try it
pretty
out, but
cool, but are you going to feel like you're on a Disney ride, or are you going to feel like, oh my God, who's flying the plane? I guess that's the real question.
and then the first comment there is from Jerry Rig Everything, which has a very fun YouTube account. If you've never seen his YouTube account, but his comment is, as long as it's not made by Boeing.
That's true.
Oh,
That's true. Yeah,
very, very, yeah. That was a dig that had to happen.
had
And then the
to.
second story is Nothing SaaS, the ultimate SaaS solution for nothing. And I don't know how far this goes, but if you click try it now, you can buy a subscription. It looks like it would be
For
an April
nothing?
Fool's joke. I don't know.
Wait,
Yeah,
you
I
can
don't know when
buy
this.
a subscription to nothing?
Yeah, you can pay for nothing,
Oh, okay.
which I'm sure there's some jokes here too. There's some services that you can joke have already cornered this market, but our Nothing master plan allows you to enjoy the perks of Nothing SaaS Pro.
SAS, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing by Edwin Star User.
Yeah, it's like a customer quote. Nothing SaaS has gave me absolutely nothing, and that's everything. Stella, real person.
But our merch is something.
Oh, do they have merch?
Yeah. The only
That's
SAS you'll
great.
get is from the founders. We give it to you straight, no SAS. I mean, hey,
Nice.
they've got some good swag.
Yeah, and so I think one of the things that this was trying to point out, and I don't know who's behind this, or I don't know the people behind it. I think they do link some of the people behind it there. I just don't know them or their reputation. But I think part of the point they're making here is all corporate websites look the same now, and they're kind of making fun of that with this website. Everything just kind of looks and feels the same. So that this might be a genius marketing design services play here.
Okay. Hey, everybody's gotta have a job, right?
I got a kick out of it, though.
No, it's very clever.
Yeah, they've got a lot of people listed on there. This person does not exist. A generated face that you can replace with your own for $29.99. That's great. All right, and that's all we've got for today. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining me today. It was a lot of fun catching up on RSA, catching up on the news. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Even though I didn't go to RSA and couldn't really contribute to that part, everything else was great.
Yeah, and it was I enjoyed it this year. It was a good time. It's RSA is usually stressful for me, but even the amount of stuff I was doing there, I had a good time. I spoke 3 times. I did 14 of these executive interviews, but I still enjoyed myself. It was a good time. Probably because I skipped all the parties and went to sleep early every night. That's probably why I enjoyed it.
And I hesitate to say this, and no names will be revealed in this conversation, but I think it's a sign of our experience in the industry. I heard from more and more people in my more friend colleague network versus just coworker, but friends, people who are around the same, we'll call it again, experience level, that they also no experience level, that they also did plenty of socializing, but they also made it to bed and didn't have to chug a gallon of water before they did so. So more people this year than in the past saying, I got sleep this year at RSA. But again, that's experience level. If you're an entry level person, maybe different.
Yeah, it's a trap. Don't do all the parties if you want to survive a week-long conference. Yeah, you got to skip them. Maybe one night. No, I don't know. All right, and with that, stay tuned. Speaking of RSA, we've got 6 executive interviews from RSA coming up next. So stick around for those. And we'll see you next week.